The Virginia legislature is at crossover period. That means the laws from the House and the Senate have crossed over to be considered. But also, in Washington, chaos in the making. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our show as we break down legislation impacting us here in Virginia. We'll be right back in just a moment. Once again, thank you for joining us as you always do on Sunday at this time as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB, Hot 91, the soul of VA. Well, listen, we had beautiful weather last week, but now it's a little fluctuating here in Hampton Roads. But we hope that you're enjoying your Sunday no matter where you are, because a day above ground is a great day. We are here broadcasting at Norfolk State to kind of break down some things that are happening in our world. Now, during this time of the year, you know that we look at our legislature and the General Assembly. And let me tell you, it's in full swing. We're at crossover period. The laws that were decided in the House are crossed over to the Senate. And those in the Senate have crossed over to the House. That's what we call crossover. And everybody's scrambling, including us here at our great Spartan Nation, making sure that all of our requests are going in and will be passed and signed. So we're on good track right now, but we're still continuing our hard work. So keep us in prayer and keep calling your legislature, making sure that your issues are heard. But also, in Washington, there's nothing but chaos that seems to be emanating from the Trump White House. Not just here in Virginia, but across the world. Individuals are looking at the United States of America and asking ourselves, is this the beacon of light for the world? Will democracy continue to be the standard across our country? But not only that, will rights be protected? Will agencies be here tomorrow? And will we receive payments on time? Joining me to discuss this particular issue on this special Stay the Water is none other than WNSB Hot 91 very own Maynard Scales. Maynard, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. Yo, thanks for getting me in here earlier this morning. You know, Super Bowl is going to be played shortly, and I wanted to hurry up and get in and get out.
Well, you know, I was going to do a Super Bowl wrap-up at the end, but since you mentioned it, you know, the Super Bowl 59 is in full swing. All week they've been in my home state, in the great city of Nolens, as we say, but New Orleans, for those of you who are not from there, you know, enjoying the Big Easy. But, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're kind of looking at doing something that hasn't been done before.
It's not going to happen, homie.
You know, look, listen.
It's not going to happen.
But real quick, they say 3 straight Super Bowls, but I just want to say that there was an NFL team that won 3 straight championships. That was the Green Bay Packers. They won the NFL title, and they won the first 2 Super Bowls. So it's been done before, you know, but I'm just saying.
Jalen Hurts is going to do his thing this weekend, today.
You know, the question is, we'll
talk on Monday.
You know what? Look, I'm just saying, you know, look, I don't have
I'll call you during the middle of the game.
Look, man, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just saying, you know, my team is the New Orleans Saints, so win or lose, we still have a great time. Right. But at the end of the day, you know, we got a lot of Eagles fans in this area, and we'll see if they can do what some say is the impossible. But we know dynasties are built to be destroyed. So we'll see if the Eagles will be that team to do that. They're meeting the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 seasons. So we got some elite teams here, elite coaches. And what about that Saquon Barkley?
Saquon Barkley, he's a different animal.
I
haven't seen anything like Saquon Barkley since Beast Mode.
Wow.
Since Beast Mode, there has not been a running back that can literally take over a game in the championship and playoff time frame, right? A lot of guys do a great job playing all season long, putting up amazing yards.
Yeah.
When you get to the playoff time, it's rarefied air.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you mention that. I'll just say this, and we're going to get to the topic at hand. But, you know, with Saquon Barkley, you've got somebody who, in my opinion, is like an Eric Dickerson, O.J. Simpson, Jim Brown combined. It's like when the game gets longer, he gets stronger.
That's right.
You know, so we'll see if a running back can, in this era of airing it out, bring home the Super Bowl to Philadelphia.
All right.
All right, so let's get to the chaos emanating out of Washington.
What chaos are you speaking of, sir?
Well, let's look. According to the AP, protesters in cities across the U.S. are rallying against Trump's policies, Project 2025, and also Elon Musk. Listen, just last week alone, policies came down where federal aid was cut across the board, actually held up, or they say paused, to where emergency meetings were being held at institutions of higher education, nonprofits, and governors and states. Calls were being flooded to the White House, to congressional offices, saying what in the world is going on. But not only that, but aid cut across the world. U.S. aid is no more as we see it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, White House executive orders wanting to end birthright citizenship. And let's just say the Department of Treasury is in the hands of a guy that created Tesla. I'm just saying, if that's not chaos, I don't know what it is.
You know when you've worked somewhere, you've been somewhere, and they got a button that says, do not touch this button? Yo, they've been touching the buttons crazy. They don't know what they're doing. These buttons do. But this is I've said this on our other show on the Claville Report multiple times after the election. This is the president that the United States deserves. This is what the people of the United States asked for. This is what they wanted. This is, so many people are going to find out. There is a term that's been around for a long time, is the term that describes my generation, Gen X. It's the F around and find out term. Well, now they have F'd around. Now they are finding out.
Well, Maynard, listen, this is I know we were joking around earlier. We were pretty jovial with the Super Bowl, but on a very serious matter, this is chaos.
It is.
Emanating from the most powerful seat in the world, not just the country, but in the world. I mean, you've said it before. This is who they voted for, and this is what they wanted. But this is not what they wanted. And we would say they were referring to those that, of course, voted for now President Trump to assume office. But they didn't really realize exactly what he was doing. As a matter of fact, according to the AP, concerns were raised about billionaire Elon Musk's access to Treasury Department data through the Department of Government Efficiency, with protesters criticizing the potential security risks and impact on programs like Social Security, Medicare. Demonstrators across the country, the U.S. protested against the Trump administration's policy on immigration, transgender rights, and a proposal to transfer Palestinians from Gaza. Maynard, keep in mind, there are a total of 208 weeks that each president has in office. 208. We're simply in the third week.
Right.
And in the third week of this man being in office, there have been a litany of White House executive orders, which, by the way, White House executive orders do have the force of law, just as statutes in Congress do, and acts and decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court. So they also can be challenged legally. However, there are some checks and balances there where things that were created, programs created by Congress, cannot be eliminated or altered by White House executive orders. But within agencies, there are things that can be eliminated, altered, changed, and implemented. And we'll go through some of that as we look at these policies. Again, only a few of these policies. But Maynard, only 3 weeks. Can it get worse?
Yeah, it can get worse. And, while you may mention that people didn't realize just what this was, but I think that they did. I think that we recognized in the original or the first Trump White House that there were these times where he wasn't, in fact, getting people appointed, but putting them in interim status so that he could play fast and loose. There were times where he was pulling on certain triggers and pulling on certain levers, where he was testing the water and floating a lot of trial balloons to see, what can I do with this? What happens if I do that? What if I fire this person? What if I employ that person? And then, so these things, we did have some idea. In addition to the fact, he said so many times throughout his campaign, this is what I intend to do. So I think a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of what was promised.
Yeah.
I do think, however, the use of executive orders is the lazy person's way of doing things. And I think there's a lot of, let me just throw this out here and they'll slap me down, but at least I get to say I did it. So there is some signaling and in creating red meat that where it doesn't exist, and saying, well, at least I tried to do it for this way. I said I was going to deport 25 million people, and I'm going to get rid of them. We're going to flatten Gaza. We're going to. He says a lot of stuff, some of which he can't do, some of which he can do, and some of which is going to be litigated, and we're going to find out where that really exists.
Exactly. So, Maynard, I want to do just a quick recap of where we are currently.
3 weeks. In 3 weeks.
Right. Where we are currently with some of the things that have taken place. As you mentioned.
You going to be able to get all this done in one show? I'm just saying.
Well, like I said, a very, very brief recap. But to your point, he did say that Project 2025 was something that he was not going to implement. Matter of fact, he never heard of it. However, when it relates to this particular document, and keep in mind, over the course of the campaign season last year, I did 3 town halls. I moderated 3 town halls. We did several shows here on this station regarding Project 2025, and also addressed it on another neighboring station here in the Hampton Roads area. So it's not as if he didn't tell us exactly what he was going to do. Even when he said he ignored it, or he didn't know anything about it, I mentioned to everyone, if you went to DonaldJTrump.com and Project2025.org, it was the exact same plan that was listed on Project 2025 as it was on his platform for election. Maynard, in this particular, now the document for 2025, Project 2025, is actually a little bit over 900 pages. It outlines the Federalist Society as operated through the Heritage Foundation and several executives from the former Trump administration heading it. It outlines in detail exactly what they wanted to do as it relates to government. Now, within that, part of it was to shore up the borders, make our military great again, make America great again, just make sure to reverse transgender rights and things of that nature. And it was basically an overview of things that he wanted to do, right? The border was one of those as well. However, Project2025.org outlined exactly what was going to take place. First of all, through personnel, through policy, and through restructuring government itself. Those are the 3 pillars of Project 2025. Now, lo and behold, when he came into office, one of the very first White House executive orders that he signed was basically for deportation and being able to utilize some of the military in order to shore up, quote unquote, the borders there. Last week, he signed an order banning transgender men from participating in girls and women's sports. In addition to that, he ended U.S. aid, which is basically about $40 billion that we give across the world for food programs and the like, which builds us goodwill, which says that, hey, if I tell a Central American country I want to come do X, Y, Z, because of those gifts that we provided in aid, they allow us to do it, right? It's called building goodwill. Food is one of the cheapest things you could buy. But he
soft power.
Exactly, soft power. And then which avoids us from using hard power, which is our military putting our citizens in harm's way. But not only that, but he went even so far to, quote unquote, trim down government by ending work from home, telework. So many individuals are having to report to the office by the end of this month, some by the end of last month in January, or risk losing their jobs or being able to take a buyout. The Commonwealth of Virginia also announced that federal jobs here in the Commonwealth, you also have to come back to the office to work. In addition to that, we have the Department of Office Government Efficiency, headed by a man who created an electric vehicle, Elon Musk, that said, hey, we're going to make government more efficient, and they bullet their way over the weekend in order to get access to the U.S. Department of Treasury payment system. What does that mean? That means that when the government issues checks, whether it be Social Security, Medicare payments, Medicare check, Medicaid checks, or even your tax refund, if you get one, They have all of the private information, social security numbers, address, your ID, your real ID that you signed into your account for. All of that information is now in the hands of Elon Musk. So Maynard is only begun that the deportations at the border to various countries, which they have actually refused to take some of those individuals, like Colombia and the like. Others have negotiated, such as Mexico and Canada. And I forgot to mention the tariffs that are placed on those countries as well, including China, which have retaliated against the U.S. in placing tariffs on U.S. goods, which the Trump White House said there will be a little pain because of this. So the question is, does the end justify the means, or are we just in a state of chaos and confusion? That's a short recap of the last 3 weeks.
So let's back up. A handful of things I think we should try to remember. He entered office the first administration and immediately asked or demanded his election czar, if you will, to go and collect all the election rolls from around the country.
Right.
That fell apart. However, he's done it again by essentially capturing the data from the Treasury that is handed off to Elon Musk, who, last I checked, was born in South Africa.
Absolutely. Doesn't
necessarily have an allegiance to America. I mean, when you were worth, $500 billion, and that may be a little bit of stretch.
Give or take. But
200, 300
but keep
billion.
in mind, his wealth was saved by a government contract from the U.S. for over $1 billion.
When you're worth $300 billion, your allegiance is to yourself. He literally is out here a whole Tony Stark, a la Iron Man, basically trading to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
So he now has access to all this data. The data that Trump wanted to get the first go round, that data that would be so very valuable to, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I imagine that data is very valuable to a guy like Vladimir Putin.
The highest bidder.
Right. And so I have concerns. He tried to obviously end birthright citizenship. We know that kind of got stalled in the water. It's unfortunate. I think we are dangerously close to seeing something along the lines of not only march people out of the nation, when we can't get rid of them fast enough, do we revisit other types of solutions? A la Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Now, what we do remember, just a handful of days ago, this man, Elon Musk, gave a Heil Hitler-style salute.
Yes.
From essentially behind the seal of the President of the United States.
And, in seeing that image, I'm glad you brought that up. There was absolutely no outrage for that. Which brings up another point. And I want to go back to 2 points you made, but I want to bring this up first. One as it relates to birthright citizenship, 14th Amendment, and the other as it relates to capturing voter rolls, but the purging of the FBI, CIA, and what I call the actual going after individuals that were doing their job in the name of justice. But Maynard, all of this is happening. And, the big thing is who's performing at the Super Bowl halftime show. All of this is happening. And, I think we're kind of sleepwalking a little bit. All of this is happening. There's no marching in the streets. All of this is happening. There's no galvanizing across social media, but wondering whether TikTok is going to be available to record the next viral TikTok dance competition. All of this is happening, and no one is saying anything. Are we at the precipice? Are we at the cusp of the United States being overtaken by an ideology, just czar, that can really do real damage to the country and take us back, not just pre-1960s, not take us back to pre-Civil War, but take us back to during slavery?
So, I think what we should recognize is the othering of people, meaning those people who are brown, who speak Spanish or Portuguese or non-English, and they do not have, a la Dred Scott decision, any rights that the white citizen is compelled to respect or abide by. Wow. That's a problem. So we are shipping them away. As you mentioned slavery, just to get to this Dred Scott decision piece as a connection. In addition to that, the colonialism of what Donald Trump has been saying. He has literally been speaking colonial talk. We're going to take over Canada. Yeah. We're going to get Greenland.
Gaza.
We're going to get Gaza.
Right.
These people, in Trump's mind, essentially have
matter.
no rights to any type of sovereignty, and some of which he appears to have at least a friendly approach to is in Greenland. The others, it's adversarial, and it comes down to I'm just going to gentrify. We're going to go with regentrification of Gaza. We're going to flatten it, start over, and put up. It's going to become the Riviera of the Middle East, is what I think you said. These things are to say that the lives of individuals who are brown, the lives of individuals who are black, the lives of individuals who are Hispanic or of some other Latin descent are of no concern, and those people have no rights that need respect or deserve respect by a man who, literally pals around with other billionaires who provide the Hitler salute. So we often get upset when people, mention like, oh my goodness, this is the Hitler of it all. We have to look at, Hitler started with, well, we have to do something with the Jewish population. We don't know exactly what it is. Well, maybe we can move them to other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe we can do this. Okay, you know what, look, let's just kill them. And that's ultimately, to some extent, what I'm fearful that we're going to. We want to move out all of these people. And you want to know why there's no outrage in the streets?
Why? Please tell me, because I've been pondering this.
Because Americans like Volvos. Americans enjoy McMansions. Americans like vacation. If you don't affect me, if it doesn't prevent me from turning on the gas in my house and keeping my home warm, then I may not care enough about what is happening to those other people. But I'm going to tell you what, when the cost of a Whopper becomes $23.74, and that's just with cheese, no tomatoes, no lettuce, because there are no migrants who are out working those fields. When they start saying to black folks who live in Brooklyn, oh, there are black jobs in Iowa, go get that black job at the meatpacking plant, then we're going to start thinking to ourselves, man, what did we do?
So what you're saying is NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Exactly.
But the moment it comes in my backyard, I've got a problem with it. Well, let's take a look at what
it's going to be too late.
Well, let's take a look at what's been happening in Washington. So just this past week, our U.S. senators, led by Senator Tim Kaine and Senator Warner, were on the steps of the Capitol warning that this is an issue. We're in a constitutional crisis. Also, stating that we're getting this because elections have consequences. All of this is happening because they lost 2 seats in the House. All this is happening because they lost control. All this is happening because they're not in majority. And all of this is happening because Harris lost the White House election to Donald Trump. Is this all happening because of that?
This is all happening because this is predestined for America.
Well, listen. I hear you, and I hear people say, well, some people, and listen, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, Savior all.
No, I'm not discussing that.
No, but what I'm saying is, I'm about to make a point. I believe when faith without works is dead. So I don't believe that this is destined to happen because I believe that you have the ability in order to have your destiny in your hands. So when there are groups of people that decided that they don't want to vote or that they wanted to listen to the lies of someone else, the lies, Lies, of someone else, and then when they turn around and do something different, they're shocked. I don't think that's destiny. I just think that is illogical. I think that is wrong, and I think that these individuals really made a mistake.
Okay.
So look, I'm just throwing it out there. But let's talk about buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse when Donald Trump announced that Palestinians can move somewhere else and the U.S. should take over Gaza. And as you said, he said make it beautiful, make it great, and so forth. They're the largest population of Arabs, according to news reports, in Dearborn, Michigan, were irate and upset at him going against, quote unquote, his campaign promises. These were the same individuals that said that they were voting against Harris because of the Biden-Harris policy in Gaza. Maynard, is this buyer's remorse? Do they deserve to be upset, or are they just part of the being caught up like everyone else, believing the lies?
So here's the problem. I think what most of America wanted Joe Biden to be was Jesus Christ. He couldn't live up to that level, and as a result, we were going to throw him out. We have to recognize, look, not everything at once. There's nothing that Joe Biden did related to Palestine in Israel that 10 presidents before him didn't do. So they decided, we're going to throw you out because you won't do it. But we did know that Trump's last administration, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, was an aggressive move. We did know that his supporter, Bibi Netanyahu, had large, aggressive overtures towards the Jewish conservative movement and against Palestine. I don't know why they acted as if they expected him to do something different than who he was.
Well, Maynard, they expected something different because they drank the Kool-Aid. But again, I fault individuals that have buyer's remorse because here's the difference. You knew what you were getting from 4 years prior. So if you had a short memory or you failed to read a news clip and you felt that things were going to be different, that's on you for the most part. And at the end of the day, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So when we talk about policies impacting our back door, our backyard, even though, Maynard, it may seem as if these policies are impacting people across the pond, the Atlantic, all the way across the we're in deserts, or even in a place of the Arctic like Greenland and the like, these things matter because it impacts us here in America. I just hope that we're not too late to wake up and understand that our democracy is at risk and we could lose our country if we fail to uphold the law, not in ideology, but uphold the law and the Constitution itself. We want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. Join us next week, as you always do, as we continue to look at the General Assembly and legislation impacting us from Washington to Richmond to Hampton Roads to you. Until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and I hope your team wins the Super Bowl. We'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.